Widener here, reality check. Thanks for watching. I really appreciate it. I'm back for chapter 4, I believe. Yeah, chapter 4 of my reading from the book, A Monument to the End of Time, Alchemy, Fulcanelli, and the Great Cross, written with the late, great Vincent Bridges, whom I'm dedicating this reading to. And so we've gone to Paris, and we've seen what Paris was like in the 1920s. And then we've introduced you to a book, Mystery of the Cathedrals, written by an anonymous person named Fulcanelli. And then there was an additional chapter added to the book when it was reprinted in the 1950s. And that chapter was about a cross in the little town of Hendaye, France. We visited Hendaye, France, pronounced Undaye in French, but I'll do the English way of speaking it. There's a reason for that I'll get to later, because it's actually a play on words. Alchemists love to do play on words, and Hendaye itself is a play on words, which we'll come to when we get there. Anyway, so today's chapter is called A Lodestone of Pure Weirdness. The Hendaye cross is the loose thread on the tapestry of history. Tug on it long enough, and the whole carefully constructed psychodrama unravels before your eyes. It is the grand MacGuffin of the mystery. Although Hendaye has grown into a good-sized resort town, the town square and St. Vincent's Church look much like they did in the past. In the 1920s and 30s, when Fulcanelli and M. Lemoyne, the painter, came to visit. Wednesday is still market day, and the vendors of fresh fish and vegetables still line the square. The people who pass by on their way to the square barely notice the nondescript cross standing against the wall of the church. Cars park a few feet away, and the everyday bustle of life in the French resort town takes place around it. Occasionally, like M. Lemoyne, a tourist stops to take a photo. It is, of course, the curious images on the pedestal that attract attention. The casual passerby sees an angry sun face and a strange cross with 4 A's. These faces of the pedestal are easily visible, but walking around the monument reveals 2 more. A man in the moon design, and close against the church, a wall, an 8-rayed starburst. The ordinary tourist snaps his shot, then looks for a sign explaining what he has just taken a snap of. Finding no information except more curious images, our tourist shrugs and later labels that side as cross with angry sun face, Hendaye. However, standing before the cross in the bright Basque sunlight on a busy Wednesday market morning, we came face to face with the great mystery. Somehow, Fulcanelli inserted a new chapter in Mystery of the Cathedrals designed to link uniquely in all chemical literature, Chileism and the secret of practical alchemy, and thereby point directly to the real secret. The nature of time itself. As proof, he offers the reality of the cyclic cross of Hendaye and its symbolic code. Like a lodestone of pure weirdness, this juxtaposition of the end of the world with the transmutational process of alchemy drew us out of our normal routines and eventually all the way to southwestern France and the cross itself. Our involvement began accidentally when one author, J. Widener, picked up a copy of Mystery of the Cathedrals at a yard sale in North Hollywood. Over a decade later, the code was cracked, and as the implications emerged, the mystery began to consume our lives. We found ourselves without any recourse but to go to France and resolve it. If the cross existed, we felt we could validate much of what Fulcanelli had to say in Mystery of the Cathedrals. Without the monument, however, the whole thing vanished into a cloud of hoaxed smoke. Yet as we decided after our last visit, other than proving the existence of the cross, going to Hendaye and researching its history left us with few clues. As we discovered, Hendaye surfaced into the spotlight of history at a few key moments. Hitler visited it in October 1940 to meet with General Franco of Spain to tantalize us with its possible significance, only to fade into obscurity with hardly a ripple of historic remembrance. The cross itself seemed to have no history, and other than Fulcanelli and Boucher, it is unremarked upon. But it does exist, and the symbols on it are just as Fulcanelli described. Could the cross at Hendaye really be a monument to the double catastrophe, which will, quote, try the Northern Hemisphere with fire, as Fulcanelli insists? That blustery spring morning, standing in front of the cross, we decided that the reality of the cross brought into focus the questions that must be answered in order to evaluate its message. We can list them in 5 broad categories. 1, is Fulcanelli telling the truth? Is there any connection in history or tradition between alchemy and such Gnostic eschatology as Chiliasm? And if there is a connection, how has it been maintained through the centuries? Is the secret really displayed on the walls of certain Gothic cathedrals? What does Fulcanelli have to say about alchemy and the cross at Hendaye? And does that information shed any light on the connection between alchemy and eschatology? What do the symbolic images and ciphers on the cross mean? How are they the rarest symbols of translation of an apocalyptic philosophy? And most important of all, do they suggest a date? 4, is there any scientific evidence to support the idea of Fulcanelli's double catastrophe? And does that evidence also suggest any insight into alchemy? 5, as if the catastrophe, and if this catastrophe is cyclical, what happened the last time? Can we find any proof? Standing in front of the cross at Hendaye that day, we realized the importance of having answers to these questions. We needed information, solid facts to resolve the mystery. We never suspected that once we had laid bare the meaning of Fulcanelli and the cross, the real work would just begin. As we found answers, both expected and unexpected, to our list of questions, we also found that our subject was expanding, also in ways both unexpected and expected. We agreed that we would focus first on the meaning of the Hendaye chapter and the monument itself. The history of alchemy would have to be included, we thought, but only to support Hendaye's message. We had no intention of attempting to unravel the ultimate mystery of alchemy itself, much less an exhaustive examination of the contents of Mystery of the Cathedrals and Dwellings of the Philosophers. We simply wanted to know if the things Fulcanelli reported in the Hendaye chapter were true. Now, after years of intensive research, we can definitely state that not only is the information in the cyclic cross of Hendaye true, but that it demonstrates a sophisticated knowledge of galactic mechanics, something that Fulcanelli would have been hard-pressed to come by in the 1920s, much less the designer of the cross itself working back in the 1600s. The implications of this are staggering. So that's the end of that chapter. That was a short one. There is, after we wrote this book and the other book, I did come across a man who was an expert in, Frenchman, who was an expert in the history of Hendaye, France. And he told me that Hitler was very anxious to visit Hendaye on his train trip across France in the 1940s. It's very interesting if you look at where Adolf stopped as he took his train trip across south of France after Germany had conquered France. He stops at all the right places. Mont Ségur, where the Cathars were wiped out. He stopped at the place where they're digging for the Holy Grail. He stopped at Rennes-le-Château, a mysterious place that is famous for its Templar history. And then finally, when this guy told me that when he arrived at Hendaye, now Hendaye is right on the Atlantic Ocean, and there's the train yard comes right to the bottom of the hill from where St. Vincent's Cathedral is. So this guy told me that as soon as the train loaded, Hitler already had his 2 German shepherds, and he immediately got off the train, and like he knew where he was going, he walked up the hill and went straight to the cyclic cross of Henday, where he supposedly met somebody. And the two had about a 2-hour discussion sitting there by the cross of Henday. I don't know if this is a true story. I heard it from someone who's very knowledgeable, an older gentleman. This would be like 20 years ago now, well, maybe 15. And he lives in Henday and knew the history of Henday. And we also know that the Diabade family, which is a wealthy family in Henday, has a really nice like chateau that I've actually visited. That they are they're really into Egypt and alchemy and Indian lore and the Mahabharata, and it's very likely that they're the ones who moved the cross of Henday from the churchyard, not from the graveyard to the churchyard. At some point, maybe in the 1840s or something, is what it's beginning to look like. Anyway, at some point, I'll talk to you about the Diabade family. It's an incredible history. But we'll be back next week. That is the end of part 1. So we'll be back with part 2 next week. I think that one's on Gnostic eschatology. Don't forget, eschatology is the study of the end of the world. I know it's a big word, but we use it a lot. And so I just want you guys to understand it. Chaleism is an ancient philosophy that examines eschatology, or the end of the world. So eschatology is really the result of Chaleism, where Chaleism is the result of eschatology. Kind of, they do the same thing. So we'll get more into Chaleism, eschatology, the double catastrophe, physics, galactic physics, how the whole thing works together in the fabric of reality. And hopefully by the time we get to the end, you'll be you'll change the way that you think a little bit, because I think that's really what alchemy is about, is changing the way that you look at the world, and coming to realize that everything you know is wrong. I'm on the fool's path. That's a group of alchemists who have different paths in the tarot deck. And my path is the fool's path. And the reason that you want to, I want to be on the fool's path, is because the fool approaches every subject as if they don't know anything about it. Therefore, they can learn that subject with a clean brain without any preconceived notions. So the fool's path in alchemy is the fastest path to enlightenment. And since, I don't know how many years I have here on this planet, I want to get there as fast as I can. So I chose the fast way. And indeed, that's how I stumbled upon the cross of Henday at the garage sale many, many, many years ago, and put me on this trail. So if I hadn't, accidentally gone to a garage sale and bought that book, Mystery of the Cathedrals, here today, I probably would never have worked at Gaia and all the other things that happen to you in this crazy world. Anyway, everybody, thanks for watching. I'm Jay Widener, and this is Reality Check. Please hit subscribe and like and tell your friends and spread the word and share, especially share. That's how we can really grow, because, I don't think this network particularly cares for me that much. I don't talk politics, so they like that. But I think that some of the subjects that we do talk about are kind of weird to them. And I think that this network would like to just end up being like a cooking network and a travelogue network. That's what it seems like they're headed, and they don't like maybe so much this esoteric stuff. So it's really important to hit share and spread the word. And we are looking into backup channels just in case they decide to take us out. Anyway, thanks for watching, everybody. See ya.